going to have a problem here.
Blumhouse's The Craft Legacy from 2020 is the worst piece of horror content that I've ever seen released. Ever. And note, I didn't call it a horror movie, and I'm not going to call it a horror movie, because the term movie, it implies some coherence, some artistic intent, even some passion. And failing all of those, at least a completed story. The Craft Legacy has none of that. So I am not calling it a movie. It is the cinematic equivalent of non-pizza with left beef. Technically it does meet the criteria, but there is something deeply wrong and missing from this, okay? I was actually so shocked by how abysmal The Craft Legacy was that I ended up asking some friends to watch it as well, just to make sure that my reaction wasn't an outlier, that I wasn't completely overreacting.
Oh my god, total atrocity. You know, it's a politically saturated piece of media. I think I threw up like 3 times. My lungs hurt. I think my lungs were throwing up as well.
It just felt like a complete waste of time. I wasn't really sure why I was there, to be honest. I would have liked to do pretty much anything else but sit through it, but I had to be there, so in the end I was sort of, I don't know, counting stripes on the wallpaper, checking my phone. It just felt completely pointless. I felt slightly insulted to have to be going through that sort of stuff.
Well, first off, the bloody thing should never have been released. It should have been kept in the vault for years and years and years and never see the light of day again. In fact, it should have been burned. That's how bad it was. But no, they had to let it out because they're incompetent, because they think, oh, this will make us loads of money down the line, potentially. You know, you got to make a good crisis. Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
There is just so much wrong with this abysmal excuse for horror content that before I do the production history, before I talk you through my full analysis of the film, I'm going to spend some time to walk you through the first scene in quite some depth. And I'm doing that because I think you need to get a sense of how bad it is going to be. I want you to be able to use the unpleasant eggy whiff of this first scene to brace yourself before the full, cold, shameful moistness of this shart of a pseudo-sequel sets in. And this first scene is a synecdoche of the failures of the Craft Legacy. All the sins are there. The diverse placeholders instead of characters, the absolutely incompetent writing, the unsubtle, unfiltered intersectional propaganda, and the worst sin of all, it's not scary. None of it is scary. And by the way, I'm going to be off camera for most of this because there is so much to get through that I think it's going to be easier for me to do this mostly as voiceover. And as a result, I'm going to have most of the footage on. But because Susan's absolutely rotten, broken copyright system is going to kick in, even though this is all fair use, you hear me, Susan, it is all fair use commentary. Despite that, I am going to have to do some meddling with the footage, some weird editing to try and get around the copyright claim system on YouTube, so please do forgive me for that. It's an unfortunate necessity of this work. And since we are on YouTube, I will of course mention, I would really like it if you liked this video, if you subscribed if you haven't subscribed already, and if you want to go a little further than that, if you really like what I do, trying to do much more detailed, much deeper analysis than you would typically get, you can of course join as a member either here or on Subscribestar. There are links down in the description below to help you do that. And if you do that, if you do show that additional appreciation, you will get a lot of posts of behind the scenes secrets, some of the Easter eggs of things hidden in the movies. You'll also get early access to content and you'll have some exclusive content. So I hope that would entice some of you. I would certainly appreciate it. So you can support me as a member via the links below. I think I got all of that, so yeah, let's just get stuck right in, right? Let's get stuck in. It takes exactly 18 seconds into the story to show that Zoe Lister-Jones, the writer and director of this content, deserves neither of those roles. In those 18 seconds, we learn that the 3 witches in this coven lack a crucial 4th member, and we can infer that this is to do magic. 2 of the witches are optimistic, but they have been failing for 2 years because there are only 3 of them.
Today's the day.
Alright, I feel good about this. Fire.
I don't know why we keep trying without a fourth.
Oh, here she goes.
What?
They begin the ritual that needs 4 witches, as they tell us, and then hit an awkward dead end in that ritual when that 4th person's input is called for. They knew this was a problem and they went ahead anyway. Why? Did they not think of this in advance? After outlining that all 4 points of the compass need to be represented, why not discuss in advance who could pull double duty? And if they can't, why try at all? And you might say this is early days, this is teething trouble and they're just learning, but they just told us that they have been trying for 2 years without success.
I don't know why we keep trying without a fourth.
Oh, here she goes.
What? It's been 2 years.
2 years of practice. I think you know by now. Zoe Lister-Jones wants to emphasise the importance of completing the coven with a 4th, establishing that the magic needs 4 people. Now she will break this rule repeatedly as we go on, but the main thing is setting up the need for a 4th witch. Zoe Lister-Jones does this in a way that requires everyone to be morons, repeatedly trying a ritual that they know fails and they lack the requirements for. This is a very bad start. Incidentally, Lister-Jones is going to fail at building character too. Frankie is always setting things on fire, reportedly. Now, as fire is Tabby's element and her job, shouldn't she be connected to fire? Lords, here on the left, talks about wanting to communicate telepathically, which sets Frankie off in a fiery way. Very volatile, I note.
Oh my god! You're obsessed with telepathically communicating.
And it seems like a huge overreaction, but maybe Lords has been extremely focused on telepathy. But when they actually manage telepathy, is it Lords who's super excited?
Sent you a message. Telepathic.
Yeah! Just like telepathically communicating with you, MBD. JK, it's like a VBD for sure.
Nope. Okay, so maybe we've just established here that Frankie is loud, obnoxious, volatile, and overreacts to things. Not a great character for likability, but that's not essential. At this early point, however, we do not know these characters' names. With subtitles on, you're only seeing Girl 1, Girl 2 arguing. And you might think this is a cheap point, but to me it's kind of a giveaway, a self-report, because these characters do feel like placeholders to me, just like they might as well be called Girl 1, Girl 2. They won't get much more personality than that to distinguish them over the course of this story, until they dutifully mention their respective intersectional talking points that add absolutely nothing to the film. Obviously they look diverse, but as characters they are basically indistinguishable and interchangeable. All this stuff, all the details, it's just superficial and it's not been thought through. After flipping her lid over Lord's mentioning telepathy, Frankie ends on an emphatic, "Read the book."
Read the book.
The book re-emphasises that they need a 4th witch to do anything beyond basic magic. Now, okay, you heard me say that. Did you just shrug? Did you just think, okay, so what? It's consistent. They need a 4th witch. I got it. I got the message. Yeah, they've repeated it a bit, but yeah, it's sunk in. I know what they're talking about. This might seem like a nitpick. I'm not going to do this for every scene going forward, but it's worth focusing early on to give you an example of a recurring problem. Roll back to what Frankie is replying to.
See, this is why we can only do basic magic. We've never had a fourth.
Read the book. So it shall be sealed and done, when all 4 corners meet as one.
Lord said they can't do telepathy because they need a 4th. And Frankie responds by saying, duh, we need a 4th. They aren't disagreeing with each other. They're both repeating the need for a 4th witch and acting as if they disagree. This dialogue does not connect. It doesn't follow from itself. All this talk of needing a 4th makes me need a 5th. As is regrettably but inevitably foreshadowed by the diverse casting, we then get the first bit of anti-Western intersectional politics.
If we're gonna be honest here, the spirits of the West have kind of been messing shit up for a while now, so why don't we just leave them out?
You got a valid point.
What I'm about to say is probably going to be very familiar to you if you've been around this channel long. I say it often because it's in response to a very common problem, the problem of absolutely unfiltered, straight-up ideology pumped into the film and spraying all over the audience. It's a common problem, so I have to give a common response. And that is, when this happens in a film, when a film just pushes pure ideology at you in the text, not even in the subtext or in the symbolism, just people straight up saying it, what I always say to that is, there is very little point in me criticising that ideology, and I don't tend to waste my time doing that, because if that is your ideology, if you share this worldview, then why would you care what I say? You know, I'm just pointing out that this is your ideology and you think, yeah, awesome, I love it. I love my ideology. I love my worldview. It's really nice seeing it represented on screen. I'm happy about this. And if it's not your worldview, if you disagree with it, if you dislike it, well, you dislike that line already, and I'm not going to change your mind either because you already agree. Maybe you like hearing someone disagree with it, but I don't think it really helps with the analysis of the film, and that's kind of what I'm here to do. So I'm going to try and avoid criticising this worldview directly because it's effectively a bit of a waste of time. All I can do really from, I think, the film analysis, the film criticism angle, is point out how very prominent it is, how unsubtle it is. I can talk about how unbalanced it is, that there isn't really any kind of counterpoint that would make the film more thematically and philosophically complex. But how you respond to these ideas, I think you have already pre-decided, and that's fine, that's okay. There's no real need to spend much more time on it. However, being concise, I would just point out that these are witches in the West criticising the West, in which they can freely practice their religion, purchase all the things they need, have books delivered from Amazon straight to their coven, and if anyone is to find out and attack them or fire them for being witches on the basis of their religion, they could sue. They could have someone charged for a hate crime. So it kind of seems kind of good to be in the West as a witch, whereas the spirits of the East over there, well, I think they would probably get you lashed. They would probably have you hanged for being a witch. And in the South, I think you'd probably be burned, harvested for organs, blamed for spreading illnesses, you know. It's, how can I say? This snarky line shows a shockingly naive ignorance of the world. And it's perhaps particularly easy to understand Tabby having this view because, you know, opposing viewpoints aren't exactly promoted and widespread and de rigueur these days. So I guess we have to ask, do you think the writer and director Zoe Lister-Jones finished writing this scene and thought, I've done a good job establishing these three characters as stupid, unfocused, naive, unlikable and incoherent? Or do you think Zoe Lister-Jones wanted us to find them passionate, funny, and politically aware? If you agree that it's the latter, then I think you also need to agree that Zoe Lister-Jones is a terrible writer.
And we on some shit, IRL. Okay.
A swift flurry of confusing images caps off the final sin of this content. It's not scary. It's not scary at all. These key flaws, they are why I consider The Craft Legacy to be content and not a film. They are horror content, not a horror movie. The characters are just placeholders with inane dialogue that doesn't follow in response to what was said previously. The snarky, current year politics often referred to as
the message
is just shoehorned in. The title may link this horror content to the well-loved original film, but that is about as deep as a connection is going to get, and I'm going to explore that in a fair bit of detail. It just feels thrown together, basically, something to make use of the legal right to the franchise and something to fill up space in the Blumhouse production schedule. I'm not going to do the whole film in the level of depth that I've done that scene. It would really push us into Mauler territory, and I am not ready. I'm not on the long man's level. I'm not in competition. I can only aspire to that level of detail. but I am going to try and focus on those 4 fundamental flaws that we see throughout this content. And I'll try and group them to avoid repetition as much as possible, while still aiming to capture the full scale of the fail. But before that, let's first ask ourselves, how on earth did this abysmal excuse for content come to be? Although The Craft was well received in 1995, it didn't get a sequel straight away as it usually would. My own theory about this is that Scream, which came out in 1996, was such a breakaway hit that studios basically saw it as a paradigm shift, and so everything after that they just wanted to be very meta. Ideally, a meta slasher. That's a new craze, that's what was fashionable. Now, The Craft was a very sort of play it straight occult film, and that just stopped being fashionable, and therefore making a sequel to The Craft just wasn't top priority. Now, after the short craze for meta horror movies, Hollywood moved on to modernising remakes of big-name 80s and 70s classics, and that started in about 2003 onwards. Around 2010, studios began discussing a direct-to-DVD sequel to The Craft. That's about 15 years and 2 trends late, and that's probably why the 2010 sequel never happened. And then in 2011, Scream 4 satirised the Platinum Dunes instigated wave of remakes and inadvertently showed Hollywood a new path. Legacy sequels, what used to be called soft reboots. Basically, it's nominally a sequel to a property, but it's effectively more of a handover. You do have some of the original characters there who basically hand everything over to a new generation of characters. 5 years into this trend in the horror genre, The Craft was set to get a straight remake. Once again, behind the times, out of fashion. And from this, I'm just inferring that The Craft was a low priority for the studios. It's an intellectual property that they owned, but no one in the studio was really passionate about it. It didn't really have any supporters. The announcement of the remake in 2015 was not met warmly. Now, I'm cautious about saying this because the media can always cherry pick the online responses that they report on and thereby frame the response however they want. But when even the original cast aren't enthusiastic, I think it's a bad omen. And it's probably fair to say that the overall feeling towards the proposed 2015 remake was negative. But I think they missed out. Now here's a plot twist. The proposed 2015 remake was set to be written and directed by Lee Janiak, who went on to make the Fear Street trilogy, which, while deeply subversive, is an incredible horror accomplishment. Janiak would have done a solid job. She started in horror, she was building her credentials and craft, and she clearly knows the genre. Her first film was the very well received Honeymoon in 2014, and she then started doing TV work with bigger studios. She was working her way into the position of being able to be a horror director. Lee Janiak was the ideal person for this job. But alas, the production fizzled. So later, horror content production turbo machine Blumhouse brought the rights in March 2019. Did they bring Janiak on board? No. Did they get someone in with similar horror credentials? Nope. They instead went with Zoe Lister-Jones. Zoe Lister-Jones had no horror experience, was a newbie, but she was trusted to write and direct this film. Now, I should caveat, obviously, we have had absolutely amazing, standout, iconic horror come from people who have had no connection to the genre. The Shining, obvious example. It Follows, another obvious example. But nevertheless, those are kind of exceptions, and I think it's fair to say that you're clearly taking a gamble when you appoint someone with no experience and no connection to the genre. Now, in classic Blumhouse style, they used an all-newbie cast with just a couple of well-known actors in small roles and made the whole film for a pretty cheap $18 million. Most likely, the most expensive part of this production was the name, the brand, and the fond memories that those things evoke in the nearly 40-year-old audience that saw the original as teens. But that crowd with all their disposable income, they might be a bit sceptical about watching a sequel made 25 years later. So what do? How do you get them interested? Well, Blumhouse decided to lure those folk in with member berries in the trailer. Lots and lots of member berries. And this, folks, is where we encounter some truly heinous dishonesty.
Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Oh.
Yeah, you see that? That's not in the film. That iconic chanting that you remember so well from the original The Craft, it's not in The Craft Legacy. But the sequence is there, and they've just kind of shoved it in a musical montage, but the chanting, not in there. It was there in the trailer to bait you. And the shot of Nancy, cluing you into the Legacy cast's involvement, evoking those fond memories, yeah? Not in the film. No. Also, not in The Craft Legacy. I'll tell you now, like the wonderful Tony Todd in the atrocious 2021 Candyman, Nancy is in the film for under 10 seconds, and she gets one line. She has no impact on the story. She is just there to be bait for a sequel and bait for fans of the original. It is very cynical. The most iconic line, of course, is dropped into...
Be careful, a lot of weirdos out here.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Oh.
As you're likely expecting now, this isn't in The Craft Legacy either. It's bait. This line does show up in the content, unjustifiably and in a totally different context, but they shot this version purely for the trailer to trick you. The cast here are wearing the same outfits as they do in their final scene, and the vibe I get from this is that it was a quickie, impromptu shot thrown in there when they were reshooting the ending, but we will get on to that later. I'll throw in one extra problem with the trailer. This scene, where the character who looks the most prepubescent strips off in front of her new friends, Hollywood, you're not even hiding it anymore. You need the wood chip, right? Anyway, this scene is in the final product, but without the helpful explanation that the trailer gives that it's a ceremony to celebrate her.
What is all this? This is a ceremony to celebrate you.
It just shows up in the magical montage that I mentioned without any explanation, and it is weird and it is off-putting. It's very groomy even with the explanation they give in the trailer, but you know, at least include the kayfabe, guys. Try and give some cover. So Zoe Lister-Jones and Blumhouse put together a trailer promising a film closely connected to the original with plenty of scares, something that will please fans old and new. How well does The Craft Legacy actually deliver on that promise? Well, as foreshadowed by the opening scene, I've already told you it's a cash-in, cheaply made product made by a newbie with no care for horror who focused so much on the message that she didn't even competently skinwalk the fondly remembered film she's parasitically clout-leeching from. That's what we learn from a short biopsy of The Craft Legacy. But I think we'll learn a lot more by cutting deeper, even if we risk drawing blood. But first, a commercial break.
This week we're going to be reading chapters 1.
Ew!
Raw is its title.
God, you seen this?
I think you dropped something.
Wow.
Have you or your family suffered an injury to your pride as a result of a period that wasn't your fault? Have you suffered a loss of friends and dignity by barebacking when you needed to ride the cotton pony? Dignity Lawyers for You is here to help. Whether you're being unflatteringly compared to the far superior Carrie, or need protection from the consistently and notably non-diverse bullies, give Dignity Lawyers for You a call today. No blob is too big a job. No flow will make us say no.
In story terms, this questionably voluminous period is the inciting incident. Young Lily here, our protagonist, she moves in with her mother, a completely underutilised Michelle Monaghan. Monaghan is one of the two well-known names in this content and deserves so much better. If you watch her in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, you will see how wasted her talent is here. She deserves so much better. Anyway, these two U-hauled it over here to move in with Adam Harrison, played by David Duchovny, with all the effort that this script deserves. Adam has 3 sons, Jacob, Isaiah and Abe, and so Lily has 3 new stepbros. Lily is naturally worried about starting a new school, and her mother tries to reassure her.
How are you feeling about school tomorrow? Are you excited? Can meet some new friends?
Well, that would imply that I had old friends.
Just remember what I always tell you. Your difference is your power.
Oh.
Now, I'm just a person who speaks with a relatively normal diction, maybe a tiny bit non-standard, but even I am wondering, why would you say that once? Let alone multiple times. I mean, you might say that if you were an intersectional activist who believes diversity is your strength, but Helen isn't written that way. Helen is written as a slightly ditzy mum who's really excited about moving in with Adam, who Zoe Lister-Jones has made a Jordan Peterson-style advocate for masculinity. So, yeah, getting with him, Helen is definitely not an intersectional activist, and this is a weird thing for her to say. It sounds really shoehorned in fact. You might include that line if activism was your main intention when making this content, and then it might be the main thing you talk about in interviews before the characters, a connection to the original, the scares. You know, if you are that focused on the message, you might not do the greatest job with the story. Anyway, Lily heads to school, and on her first day, she has an awkward and very dramatic bleed through, prompting bullying from white male jocks, leading to her running out humiliated. So, was Black Christmas's moon cup scene not forced and awkward enough for you? Well, Zoe Lister-Jones has got you covered. I think she was kind of trying to one-up that scene. I don't know. At this point, I'm just going to hand over to Waifu, who actually paused our viewing for 15 minutes to complain about this scene, and will do a far better job explaining why this scene is encephalopically bad writing.
There are so many things I could say about it, but I stopped the film to rant for 20 minutes on this one scene in particular, and gosh darn it, I'm going to do the same to you guys here. So the scene in question. It's foregrounded in the trailer. It's made very obvious that this period scene is going to be a key part of the plot. It's, you know, essentially the director said that she wanted to do a feminist reimagining of the pivotal scene in Carrie, where Carrie gets her period in the bathroom and all the girls immediately turn on her. So, you know, the kind of reworking is essentially, you know, this poor girl joins the school, first day at school, gets her period really badly, bleeds everywhere, but this lovely group of supportive, caring young women all rally round and help her, and they form this sort of super strong female bond. How lovely. One of them's not female. Let's just gloss over that. However, if you're going to do a feminist reworking of the whole period equals psychic powers kicking in trope, then for the love of God, at least do it like you've actually experienced having a period before. Because, sorry, members, if you've never had a period, I mean, I don't even know where to go with this. I don't know where to start. She's wearing quite thick jeans. She would, if she's bleeding that heavily, she would have been having quite severe cramps probably from the start of the day, because I've not met a single person who bleeds very heavily who doesn't also get cramps associated with them, at least for the first couple of days of her period. If it wasn't in the first couple of days of her period, she should have known she was on her period. She'd have had pads and or tampons, or if she's super eco, she'd have had a moon cup in, so she wouldn't have bled through. So therefore, her period has come on by surprise in the middle of English class. She wouldn't have been sat there dreamily staring at the teacher and listening to him hauntingly reading Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which obviously woke choice of poem. They're not going to be listening to Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade. She wouldn't have been sat there going, oh, so profound, so meaningful. She'd have been sat there going, oh no, I'm quite uncomfortable. Oh no, I think it started. I think my period started. oh, it feels quite heavy. Oh, I need to take a bathroom break. I need to go and, check that I'm not bleeding through. I haven't got any pads with me. Bollocks, first day at school. This is awful. She would have been in a state of quite excruciating embarrassment, because it doesn't, if you've never had a period, which clearly the director or the director of photography or someone on the set who had an undue amount of influence had never had a period, it doesn't all just come rushing out of you in one go. It's not like you've cut an artery up there. It's a slow kind of ooze. You are getting more detail than you ever wanted. But seriously, my God, like, it would have built up slowly. Probably the worst you'd get to the point that someone would notice would be Timmy sitting behind her would have noticed the beginnings of the bloodstain coming through. That would have taken probably 2 or 3 hours of steady bleeding. She'd have noticed that she'd had her period had started long before it reached that point. If you wanted to have blood running down onto the floor, then have her wearing a skirt, have her stand up at the end of class, and then blood would have potentially collected enough to trickle down her leg, but it wouldn't be dripping like she'd got an open wound. That's not how uteruses work. So, I mean, I could keep going on, but I feel like nobody is watching at this point. It annoys me so much, and you see it in so many films where they have this kind of, oh, we want to break the stigma of periods and show them on screen. It's like, if you want to show them on screen, fine, do it accurately. So, just the whole thing, I mean, I know I'm complaining about stuff being unrealistic in a film where a trans girl magically whispers up some glittery pearls to appear on someone's face. It's a fantasy film, fine. But if you're going to make this big feminist statement about, like, reinventing the period trope and about reinventing the kind of Carrie scene and re-showing it from a feminist perspective, then at least do young women's bodies the justice of showing it properly. I know I sound like an actual social justice warrior. I know I sound like a social justice warrior, but it gets my goat every single time that filmmakers do this and then try and tell us that they're making some kind of like really profound statement and showing the female body accurately when they're just not. So that was that scene.
Anyway, Girl 1, Girl 2 and Tabby from the beginning go with the flow and offer Lily support, reassurance and far more practically, gym shorts. This, folks, is our coven. Over the 84 minutes of story, they will break and enter, assault people, brainwash a chap, manipulate a vulnerable guy into sexual situations, destroy expensive property out of spite, steal property and masturbate with it, manipulate hundreds of people, and then kill a dude and leave 3 children fatherless. They're the good guys, and the film will not hold them responsible for any of it. You will also note they're very diverse. Well done, Zoe Lister-Jones. Pat yourself on the back. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Nice. Well done. The original cast had some diversity too, but not as much as here. That's right, just look. The Craft Legacy has a Jewish witch, a black witch, a Shota, and they even have a trans witch. It is brave efforts to advance representation like this that helped win Zoe Lister-Jones and The Craft Legacy the 2021 GLAAD Media Award for Outstanding Film. That's right, this won an award from GLAAD. That award is such great publicity and probably nothing at all to do with them paying GLAAD for a consultant to run inclusion seminars and be on call throughout production. I really hope audiences appreciated the effort they went to.
Oh.
I am obviously snarking here and it might sound quite 2016, quite 2017, but stick with me. I'm not just going, heard diverse characters bad. I want to show you how they utterly bungled the diverse characters here. Gatsby's... Hello, darling. I love you too. You can't say that about the Welsh. Every time I film, every time, I'm just going to keep him here for this bit, because why not? I think we all deserve a little Gatsby. It's been a while since he was in a video, even though you hear him every single week on one of my streams. Now, as I was saying, they included the diversity, but they completely bungle it. Now, take our trans character, Lourdes, for example, played by Zoe Luna. Now, I heard that the trans character originally had a much bigger part, but they cut it. Awful joke aside, to make darn sure that we know that they included a trans character, they use this shot and make Lourdes say this line.
Sorry, I just have really bad cramps. Been there. Can't relate, but it's hard.
Zoe Lister-Jones needs you to know that Lourdes is trans, so she put that line in there early, even though it makes Lourdes seem tactless, self-absorbed and uncaring. Oh, you've got a problem? Meh, I don't have that problem. Can't relate. Please focus on me. I am special. Not good.
Tell me. Do you bleed?
Can't relate.
You would never include that line if you wanted to make Lourdes empath. Have you had enough? You would never include that line if you wanted to make Lourdes empathetic and likeable. You probably might wonder if Lourdes would want to draw attention to such a deficiency, something that might be painful for her. She might find that a sensitive topic and not deal with it just completely blasé, who knows. But if you're trying to score diversity points, this is a quick and efficient way to do it, probably like the easiest, laziest way of doing it. You know, just at the cost of being, good. Anyway, Lourdes' only character trait is pointing out wrongthink in the coven, as she does here.
We literally house babies in our stomachs. That's some Ridley Scott shit. We have superpowers without even trying.
I mean, not all of us can do that, but...
Shit. You know, point taken. My bad, Lou.
Aside from pointing out that she's trans, nothing distinguishes Lourdes from Lily or Tabby, all of whom are just quieter versions of Frankie. They all agree with each other. It is a total wasted opportunity. When I say wasted opportunity, what I'm thinking of is the little hints of depth that were dropped and just never developed, never used interestingly. So, from her name, her jacket, and this bit of kit, we see that Lourdes is repeatedly linked to Catholic and Virgin Mary imagery. That implies to me that she was Catholic, and you might see a parallel between her new affiliation as a Wiccan after leaving Catholicism and her transitioning. That could be interesting, right? That's some interesting stuff, interesting background. However, the film does absolutely nothing with this, and it just dresses her as a goth after these early scenes. And I wondered, okay, maybe the name Lourdes is because of her element being water, and the supernatural properties of holy water from Lourdes is, oh bugger, her element's earth, isn't it? Damn.
I summon the spirits of the north, spirit of earth and body.
It's almost like no one thought about this. Lourdes' element should be water. Frankie's element should be fire. Ugh. Anyway, let's move on to this sledgehammered line.
You know, point taken. My bad, Lou.
Yeah, it's all good. Y'all know trans girls got our own magic anyway. Or they do.
That was the sound of the craft legacy just breezing past an actual interesting idea that they could have explored. You see, Wicca is intensely linked to biological sex. Women's power and the complication of a non-female witch is a very knotty and interesting topic. How the Wiccan framework of sex and the intersectional framework of gender would interact, would clash, would intersect, thank you Gatsby, is an interesting area to explore. But this content, The Craft Legacy, will not do that. Not for a second. This film had 3 Wiccan consultants. 3. Waifu presumed that they fired the first 2 for saying males can't be witches, but there could be other explanations. I just don't find them as funny. Either way, this content has 84 minutes of story and 4 relevant consultants. They had the time and resources to explore something interesting and novel. However, I suspect that Zoe Lister-Jones was desperate to avoid being cancelled, and so instead of delving into an interesting, complicated topic with clashing opinions, she just threw in a sassy hand wave and moved on because she doesn't care. We also get my next favourite moment of scripting incompetence here, the response to Lords saying,
Yeah, it's all good. Y'all know trans girls got our own magic anyway.
And look, that's why covens have always been so important, because half the battle of having powers is believing you do.
That is why covens are so important. Half the battle of having your powers is believing you do. This is a powerful, stunning and brave message, but it doesn't follow what just happened, what was just said.
Yeah, it's all good. Y'all know trans girls got our own magic anyway.
And look, that's why covens have always been so important, because half the battle of having powers is believing you do.
How is being in a coven helping them believe that they have powers? Lords is already totally self-assured, and Frankie just got demoralised for her microaggression. You could rewrite it so that Tabby says, hey, we need to make this coven supportive for all of us here, because we need to believe in our power for it to work. But she didn't say that. Not that it matters, as Zoe Lister-Jones will make it clear you don't actually even need to believe in or even be aware of your powers for them to work. But moving on.
Why does Ross, the largest friend, not simply eat the other 5?
Tabby gets even less characterisation, with only 1 moment of token dialogue.
I wish I had more black friends.
Oh.
I am scared for my brother's safety every day, and I don't like Beyonce.
No one really responds to it, and it's pretty weird to tell your friends that they'd be better if they were race swapped, and you just kind of prefer people who weren't them. But apparently this is fine. As with Lords, it kind of feels just like ticking a checklist. Tabby got to do her BLM moment, that's that bit of politics covered, and now it's back to Tabby being nondescript and interchangeable. Question number 1. Without referencing appearance, how would you describe the character of Tabby?
Is that the tomboy?
Which one's Tabby?
Is she the really loud... No. She's not... I was about to say tall, but that's appearance. I'm not sure. Which one was she?
Yeah, it's a visual thing. She's not like... I wouldn't even say she's stereotypically black, apart from that one scene where she says, I don't love Beyonce. No, don't like Beyonce. I love Beyonce. Like, other than that, she's no different. Oh, she says she wanted more black friends. Well, you could move out.
How would I describe her? Like the other women, very annoying. Well, like the other girls in the coven, I should say, very annoying, and I wanted to punch them all in the face. She's very woke, as they all are. Again, the only thing that actually makes her different from the rest of them is the fact she's black. And then when they're doing the 2 truths and a 2 lies and a truth, she says like, "Oh, you know, I don't like Beyonce. I wish I had more black friends." Which, to be honest, if I was friends with her and she said that to me, I'd be like, "Well, you know, screw you." Like,
it's a bit weird, isn't it?
Sorry, I'm white. Yeah.
For a contrast, I want you to think back to Rachel True's performance as Rochelle in the original The Craft. Rochelle was biracial and she was bullied for it, which generated resentment that she acted on excessively. However, she realised she had gone too far and she paid a price for it in the film. Though she wasn't ever perfect and she still wanted to have power at the end, she did learn via suffering and complete a character arc. But in The Craft Legacy, Tabby just says that she's black and that's tough, though we see absolutely nothing indicating that this is true. This is myopic writing. It's just my intuition, but I feel that Zoe Lister-Jones is so focused on her agenda, on her ideology, that she is just assuming that you share it, and therefore she doesn't need to persuade you, she doesn't need to demonstrate. She assumes that you agree with her, and so she can just say the thing and you'll nod your head. That's what I mean by myopic writing.
Wait, you don't like Beyonce? No, bitch. I love her.
Anyway, moving on to Frankie. She appears to be the most developed character and also, I think, the self-insert. Like the writer, she is Jewish, she's brunette, she was bullied in high school, Frankie is more volatile, she's willing to be edgier, as when here she pushes for a spin the bottle game.
And then, like, maybe we could make this a spin the bottle situation.
Oh my god.
And fishes in the bin for a used Johnny.
I think I found something from this physical person.
Oh no.
Nasty. Nasty. Oddly, Frankie is also given distinctive dialogue, speaking in a louder, more slang manner. I may be off, but it reads to me like dialogue for a cliché black character. I emphasise cliché there. But perhaps fearing cancellation for stereotyping, Zoe Lister-Jones gave that dialogue to Frankie instead.
Yes, y'all, it's the moment reckoning.
As with the telepathy bit, we've seen Frankie is not consistently characterised. That leaves Lily.
Some shit IRL.
Okay, can somebody translate?
Yeah, I was stumped trying to follow that sentence. What are Lily's character traits? Passivity, sometimes timid.
This is a lot, but I'm listening and also working through a low-level panic attack.
I've got nothing. I'm sorry, I've got nothing. The film explicitly references Twilight in this scene, and it made me think of the theory that that type of novel has deliberately bland lead women so that the target audience can project themselves into the role.
And if we get to stage 4, I'm low-key turning myself into Kristen Stewart.
Don't judge. She's a Twilight stan.
Lily is pretty much that standard blank slate who, it turns out, is incredibly powerful and no one realises how amazing she is.
Will you be our 4th? Come on, I got bad knees.
Her ACLs are gonna tear.
You had me at shapeshifting into Kristen Stewart.
So amazing, in fact, that she can magically manipulate an already brainwashed chap into being into her, make out with him, steal his property to be a masturbation aid, and be blamed for none of it. She made the culpability disappear. Powerful magic. I should probably explain that, and this is going to lead into discussing a lot of the plot. Lily joining the coven instantly lets them freeze time.
Fate. We bear the 3 keys.
First try, without Lily knowing her part of the ritual.
We open the triple gate.
You might think that freezing time itself requires some practice, but no. They're just awesome instantly without any effort. I think there's a word for this type of character.
The air, the fire, the water, the earth, return, return, return.
Main character is a Mary Sue.
What's a Mary Sue?
You really don't want to know.
What?
Actually, you do want to know because you care about good writing. Your uncle would be so disappointed. You just spit on his grave. Anyway, the first bit of magic they do requires even less effort. Timmy, the white male jock bully, harasses Lily with a period joke, and she telekinetically throws him into a locker. A teacher who is off-screen responds to obvious supernatural activity by giving them both detention, because why would story beats have consequences? Whilst in detention, Lily gets a telepathic message.
If you can hear this, you're our 4th.
She gets permission to leave to use the bathroom and then legs it with her new buddies.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Sure, make it quick. Sure, make it quick. Make it quick.
Now, is there any comeback to her skipping detention, any further punishment? No, of course not. Why would story beats have consequences? You'd imagine Lourdes would be overjoyed to have finally delivered a telepathic message, seeing as she's so obsessed with it apparently, but no, Frankie is the most excited. You, watching this, you're smart, and you likely have a question forming in your brain. Didn't the opening scene relentlessly belabor the point that they needed a 4th witch to do telepathy?
We've never had a 4th. I mean, it's like, how many times have we tried to telepathically communicate?
Oh my god!
So, with Lily not being aware of her powers or them, is her being physically present enough to unlock telepathy? No ritual required.
Who sent you a message? Telepathic? Yeah! Just like telepathically communicating with you, MBD. It was a test to see if your antennas were up. And they up! Way up. They up!
Well, apparently it is. How did Lily magically toss Timmy into a locker? Well, reportedly, all 4 of them had a unified intent in the moment, and that was enough.
And like we all thought it at the same time.
Wait, what? Tell me, you didn't think about throwing his ass off of you.
Yeah, I did.
Well, so did we. And then BAM!
You definitely need the 4 of them together and the ritual to freeze time though, okay? Zoe Lister-Jones has established that rule. She made it so clear. Tabby had to get Lily to say her words or it wouldn't work.
Bear the 3 keys.
I know that.
Or not. Okay, here the coven have broken into Timmy's home to get revenge on him for being a toxic white male. They need some of his vital essence for the spell, so Frankie fishes a used prophylactic out of the bin and they do some spooge magic, which means I have had to say the words spooge magic. I will never forgive the Craft Legacy for this. Oddly, they don't want to show the item, they keep it off camera, they don't explicitly name it. It's weirdly tame, given how gross the thing is that they just don't show it. Anyway, they brainwash Timmy, framing it as awakening him to his highest self. The Craft Legacy will feign brief interest in the moral question brainwashing a person raises, but ultimately decide that it's absolutely fine and for the greater good. In fairness, as this film is aiming to brainwash its impressionable audience, how could it object to stealth indoctrination? They're interrupted by Timmy and his father returning and make an absolute ton of noise when escaping. Are they heard? No. Are any of them injured jumping out of a first floor window? No. And not even Frankie, who has bad knees, as we were told.
Come on, I got bad knees.
Our ACLs are gonna tear.
Hell no. Why would story beats have consequences? To avoid being caught, they freeze time. In this case, no ritual, no chanting. Apparently, I guess they all just needed to think it. I guess it's another case of unified thought. Oh no, wait, hang on. They do need the chant and ritual because 2 minutes later, they freeze time again. Zoe Lister-Jones, make your damn mind up. This is the magical montage where they just tit about with no context, managing every single spell with ease, as they have no struggle to master the magic and just seem to be larking about. There is no sense of achievement. We never see them struggle to do something. They are just instantly awesome. I know there's a word for this.
What's a Mary Sue?
In a bid to add some kind of tension, David Duchovny's Adam returns from a business trip and is concerned about Lily assaulting Timmy and getting a detention. Her mother is apparently fine with it, and Adam is the bad guy and crazy strict for being concerned and treating her equally and having a zero tolerance policy towards violence. What a douche.
I get back from a week away doing groups and Jacob tells me you assaulted Timmy Andrews?
I was defending myself.
He said Timmy didn't lay a hand on you.
Well, he whispered something in my ear and I was...
He whispered
Okay.
something, so you hit him?
Well, if you just let me finish
When
what I'm
I
trying...
am speaking, please don't interrupt me.
Okay.
Thank you. Sure, the circumstances were complicated, but, with my boys, I have to have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to violence. So, more than anything, I'm disappointed, Lily. In you. Really disappointed in you.
Wow. Way to stick it to the man, Mom.
Really? Zoe Lister-Jones does seem to genuinely mask off, think that this is bad. Would she say so openly? Probably not. But Lily is presented as justified here, and Frankie later uses her powers to inflict violence on a different white bully, and it's a girl boss moment.
It's so sad that you, try to look pretty.
Careful. Words hurt.
Yeah, take that, you entirely randomly cast blonde-haired, blue-eyed bint. I am seriously concerned about the lack of diversity among the villains here. We need that representation, you know. If you can't see it, you can't be it. But this isn't a 2016 era enlightened centrist channel here. I'm not criticising Zoe Lister-Jones' admirably Heinleinian stance on enforcing your will via the supreme authority from which all power stems.
This is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authority is derived.
No, I am just interested in how conscious this story is of its own expressed morals. So, being wronged, does Lily try to explain her actions? No, she appeals straight to tribal solidarity.
Wow. Way to stick it to the man, Mom.
Really? This horror content is an endless self-report, honestly. Oh, by the way, that confrontation with Adam, does it have any consequences? Is she grounded? No, she's straight out to a party in a couple of scenes, so why would story beats have consequences? The only thing that flows from this confrontation is that Lily feels aggrieved and has a heart-to-heart with Abe, her youngest, newest stepbro, who says his dad can be really strict sometimes.
Listen, my dad can be strict, but he does it out of love.
But the thing is, we never see this. Unless the last scene was meant to be an example of strictness, I don't know. I mean, if Adam's saying, please don't use violence, whilst acknowledging that the situation was complicated and instigating absolutely no punishment at all, if that is strict, I truly marvel at how permissive Zoe Lister-Jones' worldview is. Anyhoot, the indoctrination spell actually worked. Thanks to their sorcery, Timmy is a fully paid up bugman who now cites black trans activist Janet Mock, loves Princess Nokia for her politics, and really cares about consent.
Super inappropriate. It's like, can you please send him to the principal's office already? I mean, he's making so many people here uncomfortable.
I mean, I just love her politics. I mean, just the way she uses her artistry to deal with race politics and gender politics. I read this interview with Janet Mock.
As previously mentioned, Zoe Lister-Jones is too shoddy a writer and too zealous an activist to write Timmy's indoctrination with any grace, nuance or consideration. Such a massive turnaround in character to an extreme outlier worldview is ripe for comedy. But Zoe Lister-Jones agrees with that worldview, and so she doesn't approach it that way. She also doesn't consider that Timmy's higher self would do anything but agree with her 100%.
Nokia.
Of course, every single good character agrees on every single minute facet of intersectional theory. They're the good guys, you know, of course. No one could be good and have a different perspective. What, are you crazy? This is a prime example of the Jordan Peele paradigm. That is, being so focused on delivering your ideological message that you don't put any effort into making the story or the characters coherent or believable. Here's another filthy little debauched example. Lily returns home and she hears an alarming sound, a woman screaming and in pain. And this content briefly pretends to be a horror movie again. You know, I appreciated that. We see Lily nervously trying to find out which woman is in pain, but
What are you doing, step bro?
here in this scene, Zoe Lister-Jones wanted to highlight that without the visual context, porn sounds a lot like a horror film and is easily seen as men getting off to women suffering. Because of that, you should really consider how healthy porn is. Based. Good job. Nicely delivered message. Genuinely, it's well delivered. Yeah, her stepbro was just in there, subbing to PewDiePie, when Lily walked in. But you have to ask, why was Jacob broadcasting porn to the entire house? He closed the door for privacy, but why did he have the sound really loud so anyone could hear? Like, would any man actually do this? Also, weren't we told a few scenes earlier that Adam is super strict? Wouldn't his children be a bit more cautious about obvious deviancy? Apparently not. Add to that, isn't it also pretty contrived that Lily can hear 2 minutes of audio from this content, and there is no more obviously eroticized sounds, no vigorous tumescent slapping, no giveaway dialogue?
You have a couple lemon whores in this community. That
Those
sneak
damn
in.
lemon-stealing whores.
Hate them.
Yeah, it's completely contrived. We can only conclude that this scenario is absolutely ridiculous, but Zoe Lister-Jones wanted to push her message, and so she did not care. The message came first, presumably followed shortly by Jacob. The myopia continues in the Timmy plot, where the newly sensitive orbiter Timmy cries over how hard it is being bisexual and being presumed to be one way or the other.
Isaiah and I hooked up. I'm sorry, I don't know why. I've never told anyone this before. And it's like Jacob's my best friend. It's just hard for dudes. Everyone just assumes you're just gay, and that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I like both. You know.
If Susan's copyright drones wouldn't disregard obvious fair use and strike me for doing so, I would just play the scene in full for you. I want you to listen to the hesitancies and caveats and see how on tiptoe everyone is to try not to offend anyone, and just how unnatural the whole dialogue is.
Everyone just assumes you're just gay, and that's fine. You know, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
It really does have this weird sort of extra special episode PSA vibe to it. Like, here's a point, but here's a caveat. Please no one be offended.
Oh, I like both. You know.
And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
Now here I could also make a point of how trivial Timmy's complaint is, but this is again pretty subjective. If you really think bi-erasure is a big deal, I can't convince you otherwise. To be as fair as possible, there are thousands of gripes, causes and issues that people care about, and I don't think you can actually logic someone into being emotionally invested in it. There are a whole host of factors going into why people care about specific causes, whilst other ones, nominally far more worthy and far more impactful, don't move them at all. We aren't going to untangle that here. A lot of those processes, they are not rational, so it's kind of pointless trying to logic it. The most I think I can say is, you know that this topic, bi-erasure, is pretty darn niche, and trying to make a mass audience care about it is very likely to alienate them and bore them. However, that is not the point that needs making. The relevant question is why Timmy is concerned about bi-erasure when he's closeted. No one knows he's bi, everyone thinks he's hetero, he has not faced the great crushing burden of people assuming he's gay. He just has not had that experience in his life from what he's told us. This is just me paying attention to what a character actually says. I genuinely think that Zoe Lister-Jones was prompted by her hired GLAAD consultant to get a bisexual issue talking point into the film, and so she did so without making any effort to make it fit the actual plot, character and story. This conversation does not flow from the story. But then why would story beats have any consequences?
I like both.
Can't relate.
You know.
Later that night, it gets worse, and yes, she's doing what you think. We're going to skip over the creepiness of the scene, imagine if the roles were reversed, blah blah blah, you know that stuff. Just instead, focus on Lily casting a spell to draw Timmy close to her that night.
As this garment glows in light, I draw you closer to me this night.
Did she need to do that? Was Timmy not already pretty obviously into her?
No, Lily seemed like one of two things to me, and both were prepubescent. It was either a lesbian girl or a 10-year-old boy. And it was very awkward throughout, especially at that scene.
Now, at this point, I want you to recall the original film, The Craft. That far superior film actually had a very similar plotline, with the protagonist Sarah casting a love spell on Skeet Ulrich's Chris. And she does that because she's upset with his caddish behaviour, and she's a believably emotional, impulsive teen. That love spell has predictably unforeseen consequences, and Chris becomes infatuated with Sarah, stalking her and then attempting to, let's say, force himself on her. It's a lesson in hubris, in the harsh realities of romance, and of being careful what you wish for. It is a far better storyline. So will the Craft legacy, which was so concerned about consent, apply any real consequences when Timmy is magically manipulated into sexual activity? Will it condemn Lily for sexual coercion? No, it will not. After the briefest consequence-free feint at problematising her actions, no. Unexpectedly, we're told Timmy kills himself after this, prompting the coven to consider whether they did something wrong. Yes, you really did.
I have some very difficult news to share with you this morning. This morning, Timmy Andrews was found dead in his bedroom.
Verdict? Suicide.
However, as Zoe Lister-Jones approves of brainwashing people, you'll see her pull a last-minute switcheroo to make Lily's culpability disappear, a truly unbelievable feat of magic. We will get to that. Why is she on the bed like that? Is she expecting him to... Anyway, don't worry. I'll also note that 57 minutes into the 87 minutes of story, we get an attempted scare. Isaiah has sleepwalked into Lily's bedroom. Jacob apparently knows this is a common problem. This was not set up, and it will not be mentioned again, and you could cut it from the film entirely with no plot impact. In fact, during my first viewing, I told Waifu that this would never be brought up again, and I was right. It really feels like Blumhouse sent a production note to remind Zoe Lister-Jones what genre she was meant to be in. As Zoe Lister-Jones may have been paid to make a horror movie, but she clearly didn't care about that, so she crammed this in and said, that'll do. Nah, it'll be fine. Righty. So Timmy's died off screen, and we have to focus on the real victims. These witch thoughts. After witching with gay abandon, using their power frivolously, and oh hey, another white bully. What are the odds? That's crazy. And manipulating someone for their sexual pleasure, are they going to face consequences? Oh, you know the answer now. Come on. You know the answer. I really, really wish they went for any of the other witches for the romance plot. Kaylee Spaney, I do not mean to be offensive, she is presented like a 12-year-old here, and it is giving really creepy vibes. Tabby here is legitimately annoyed at Lily, but for jeopardising their coven's plans and acting solo. Not for slipping Timmy magic rehypnol, no. 18 years after this scene in Buffy Season 6, you would think a feminist horror movie would not make this mistake, but hey.
It's not some fantasy, it's not a game, you freaks! It's rape!
She used her powers irresponsibly.
But like, are we any better, though? I mean, like, what we did to Timmy.
As Lily, and presumably only Lily, appears to have used her power irresponsibly, the Coven ostracises the least diverse member of the group. When Lily emotionally overreacts at Timmy's wake, throwing her mother down, they will decide to bind her powers and theirs in a moment of utterly perplexing pacing.
I'm bound for magic.
We prevent ourselves from doing harm.
But wait a second. Lily magically threw her mother down? with no words, no ritual? Was it unified thought? I mean, that's what we were taught previously, so the others must have all been wanting to slap her mum down, right? No? That's the rule, isn't it? Oh, apparently not. We are heading into the worst written bit of the film here, so we need to just pause and take stock. We are 74 minutes in to the 84-minute story of the Craft legacy. There is no antagonist whatsoever unless you count Lily. Zoe Lister-Jones does not count Lily. So what is our plot here? That the Coven have instantly achieved everything they tried with no effort. The only wrinkle in their plan is Timmy self-deleting, which, unless they aim for a resurrection, isn't exactly a plot to resolve, so what needs to be overcome here? Zoe Lister-Jones possibly had this exact same thought because she is going to give you an antagonist now, and you are going to be astounded at how ineptly she does it. Remember the trailer showing a photo of Nancy in a scene that is not in this piece of content? I thought Nancy might somehow return as the antagonist, but she doesn't. If you follow the original film story, the Coven actually becomes the antagonist themselves because they get a bit drunk on power. It's a valuable lesson for teens about peer pressure and responsibility. However, when so much of your focus is on the diverse cast, are you really going to make them villainous and power mad? I mean, those optics aren't good. Those optics aren't kosher. No, that is off message and heretical. You can't do that. So you've spent the whole film showing white people and only white people being awful. You can't be balanced. I would absolutely love to have seen the production conversations, Zoe Lister-Jones realising that she has to wrap things up and hasn't had any kind of arc to conclude, no antagonist to overcome. But, oh, hang on. She does have one straight, white, male.
My mother would never tell me my difference is dangerous.
Yes, they do this. Are you surprised? Are you caught out? Do you think I dropped the ball? Skipped over some setup for this revelation? I really didn't. At which point in the film did you realise who the antagonist was?
I think it was probably the point he took the glamour off being her mum. Like standing by the car and then was like talking about power.
So pretty much at the reveal itself.
Yeah, with sort of 10 minutes to go. I kind of got... To be honest, I didn't really know there was an antagonist up until that point.
I asked you to make notes on when you had identified the antagonist in the film. At what point did you identify the antagonist?
The time code I've got down is 35 minutes, 20 seconds in. Specifically, I know the exact bit of dialogue where I went, right, that's the bad guy then. So I knew the bad guy was the dad, or Mulder from X-Files, because Lily sneaks out the home after she's been told off. I can't remember the details of why, but she sees one of the brothers there, and the brother says, "Oh, my dad always says
power equals order."
And I was like, right, he's going to be the bad guy then. That's the exact bit of dialogue where I could tell where it was going.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
So, I thought it was silly. For me, it came out of the blue.
No, I could tell. As soon as that line of dialogue was said, I was like, right, the bad guy's going to be the dad. And it turned out it was, spot. I mean, I take it at this point in the video, people will know.
Yes, they will. Just to save my reputation...
Mm-hmm.
Did you know he was the antagonist because of what was set up in the story, or because it was an ideological giveaway?
Ideological giveaway.
Excellent. I can have some dignity.
Yes, no, the setup for him being the bad guy was very messy. It's only really obvious for anyone who isn't very hyper aware of the politics when he's doing the circle of paganism, I guess I'll call it.
Well, I identified the thematic villain, and that is all masculine men that are untouched by feminism. Oh, yeah, I knew it was the guy from X-Files. I was like, no, what are you doing?
Were you satisfied with that revelation?
That he was like a pagan leader, and he was like saying that women should be men's servants or something, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
No, I wasn't satisfied. I mean, I knew it was coming. I knew that he would be the bad guy as soon as they showed that book, that he was a kind of pickup artist or Jordan Peterson type thing. Actually, he's not even like Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is, as much as he likes to say that he's religious, he's not very religious.
Throughout the story, Adam is a sweet guy.
Little birdie told me midship was your favorite. Ooh, wow, analog. I dig it. Old school. Ready?
He's a loving father who does his best to make Lily feel welcome. He treats her like he treats his own kids. He tries to bond with her. He gets her favourite ice cream. We're told he's strict, but we don't see it at any point. We may be expected to view this gathering as sinister, but he's encouraging his son here to express emotion and supporting him.
My son lost a friend today. No, we all face tragedy every day. The question is, how do we face it? It's okay. No, it's okay.
It's just hard for me to see this as awful. Unless you really want to hate on this, how do we eliminate the weakest among us line? I mean, damn, they even do autism-friendly clicking for agreement. Are these really the bad guys? I think you would have to be very myopically biased to see Adam as evil and to see this as foreshadowing, unless you just automatically think a group of men is a bad sign. This content really is a self-report for Zoe Lister-Jones' prejudices. Even if we grant that this gathering is a sinister warning, it comes 62 minutes in, 22 minutes from the end of this story. This is really last-minute plotting. You don't need me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Zoe Lister-Jones is a terrible writer and should not have been given the responsibility for this film. Showing her ideological prejudice further, Adam is meant to be a Jordan Peterson figure, so very current year. But we never see him say anything off, anything hateful. I think we're just meant to take him supporting men and encouraging men as self-evidently bad and sinister, which I think you can only do if you have Zoe Lister-Jones' intersectional social justice worldview. Now, if you were a competent writer, you could write a few scenes showing the lectures that he's giving, maybe something from his men's group. You could build in setups for this last-minute payoff. And David Duchovny is a solid actor. You could give him a chance to act, to try a Petersonian monologue that foreshadows his evil side.
It's like the young man's journey. It's classical. It's mythical. The young man knows it's on him, right? He has to defeat the dragon and fetch his father from the underworld. But a woman, she needs to defeat that attitude and go fetch a sandwich from the kitchen. Bloody women.
That would make use of a good actor and could persuade an audience that isn't in ideological lockstep with you. However, as I hope I've demonstrated, I just don't think Zoe Lister-Jones is intelligent or empathetic enough to understand this issue, something that would fit the finding of Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. To summarise it very quickly, people of Zoe Lister-Jones' persuasion are terrible at comprehending the arguments and worldviews of opposing philosophies. So she just doesn't include them or try and represent them at all. Simply being a straight white male standing up for men and not being endlessly permissive is enough to be evil. That is what we're meant to believe. The film does not work unless you believe that. I mean, plus there's the Christian element, he's Adam, he's given all his kids biblical names. Apparently that is sinister enough too on its own. Why would the director do this? Anyway, we have no time, moving on. There's a weird and forced time skip here. Because Zoe Lister-Jones is a terrible writer, she needed Lily helpless and unable to use her powers in this conflict. So she has Tabby, Frankie and Lourdes bind her and themselves. Why didn't they just bind Lily once she confesses to non-consensual shenanigans in this scene? Well, I know that would be the obvious thing, but I can only guess it's because Zoe Lister-Jones wanted a Carrie-esque incident at the wake for high drama and to have a vaguely scary thing for the trailer. So she has the diverse trio bind Lily in response to this incident. But then that introduces a new problem, because as Lily is attacked immediately after this, Zoe Lister-Jones then needed to give the diverse trio time to get to one of their houses and do the binding. Therefore, she has to insert a weird time skip that is completely unexplained. It's daytime here, it's nighttime here. Adam reveals himself here, knocks Lily out, and bam, several hours time skipped. We've gone from day to night. Why? There is no in-story reason, only the practicalities of needing the hastily concocted plot elements to play out in the right order. Except we're shown the binding first, so the diverse trio somehow manage to get back to one of their houses before Lily gets from the living room to the car park. Zoe Lister-Jones is a terrible, terrible writer. Anyway, folks, we are very close to finishing. I promise you, I know it's long. 75 minutes into an 84-minute story, we suddenly have an antagonist. And he is so bored.
I want your power.
I'm having to distort these scenes to dodge the inevitable unjustified copyright claim, but I want you to see how bored David Duchovny is. He is just so much better than this tripe, but he's trotting out boilerplate, non-specific, sexist bad guy dialogue.
You see, that's the thing about girls with power, Lily. They're always too weak not to use it against each other. We are your rulers and kings.
And you can just see it in his eyes. He knows how shoddy and weak this material is, how absolutely by the numbers it is, how there was just no setup for this. It all feels tacked on. Almost like, this was a reshoot after the original ending was rejected. I mean, I can't find confirmation of that, but it has all the hallmarks of it. Why is Adam doing this? He tells us he wants Lily's power.
I want your power.
But after the tiniest bit of resistance, he'll just kill her.
You'll have to kill me first.
Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, if he could kill her for getting the power anyway, why wait? I don't know. Anyway, inevitably, Lily is saved by diverse trio who freeze time. I think we need a recap now. So, according to the Craft Legacy, to freeze time, you need 4 witches, a ritual, and chanting. Unless you just need unified thought from 4 witches. No, it's chanting from 4 witches, definitely. Unless you need it for the finale, in which case 3 witches with unified thought and no chanting is fine. And yes, 3 witches, because Lily is bound at this point. She can't use her magic here, and Frankie unbinds her 79 minutes in, 7 minutes after they originally bound her and themselves.
We're sorry. We love you and we unbind you, Lily.
I could tell you how they knew to get here, but it's about as nonsensical as the rest of this, so we're just going to skip over that. I prefer to just focus on how weak the writing is, to make a big teary scene of them binding themselves, and then undo it 7 minutes later, super casually. What's just, getting out of it, what's the phrase? Super easy, barely an inconvenience? Why would story beats have consequences, huh? This scene is just painful, folks. There's a weak, tension-breaking joke so shoddy that even Marvel would rethink it.
There's no I in sisterhood, baby.
Bro, there's definitely I in sisterhood.
You get my meaning.
Completely tensionless miming that CGI artists are attempting to rescue and failing. Plodding, slow movement as characters wait their turn to act. Duchovny, he's just so bored in this, and you can understand it. It's kind of Chad how he's refusing to dignify this slop with any effort. I kind of like it. Adam goes through the motion of announcing that he killed Timmy, which spares the girls any guilt for mind-controlling a vulnerable teenager and making him do sexual acts. It sounds quite bad when it's spelled out, doesn't it?
Timmy's a good example of that. Until you tried to make him in your own image. So then I had to kill him. So then I had to kill him. So then I had to kill him.
He just lets them do their nonsense and the CGI do the work and...
Air, fire, water, earth. Air, fire, water, earth.
Sorry, 80s kid stuff, can't help it. Inevitably, as he is just a straight white male, the diversity surrounds him and wins out, burning him alive. Burning him alive. Oh yeah, we never find out how a warlock's power works. Why he doesn't need a coven. Is his men's group a coven? Zoe Lister-Jones doesn't care, so she doesn't explain. However, she did cram in a callback to the most famous line from the original, of course.
You girls ought to be careful in the woods at night. A lot of weirdos out here.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Oh.
Here, though, it makes no sense whatsoever. Adam has, of course, no reason to say this line, but it is basically contractually obliged for the member berries, of course. Ah, she said the thing. She said the thing. Yay! Now, as Zoe Lister-Jones suffers from the Jordan Peele paradigm, I feel I should point out she actually nailed the symbolism for her message here. That message is that the diverse groups, by coming together, by forming a coalition of minorities, they can overpower the straight white male patriarchal power structure. Now, whatever you think of it, that symbolism is actually neatly conceived and neatly delivered. And that's good visual storytelling. Well done. What? I'm balanced. What do you want? It was well delivered symbolism. I like that. Anyway. There's also an extra element that I know that Zoe Lister-Jones added in, challenging Christianity. As mentioned, Adam gave his 3 boys biblical names, but what you might not have noticed was the significance of Lily's name. Now, when this was first outed, she was originally called Hannah, but was renamed to Lilith, as we see on this birth certificate. The name Lilith has many ties to the modern-day occultism of Crowley and Gardner, and more significantly in biblical tradition as the first wife of Adam, who disobeyed him. Something motivated the writer and director to draw on the Judaic tradition for the name Lilith to indicate a heroic opposition to Christianity and the patriarchal figure. I mean, maybe it's just an esoteric coincidence, who knows? But if it's deliberate, it's kind of clever, and I like it.
Now it's your turn to burn.
So with Adam burned alive 8 minutes after his villain reveal, that's pretty much the movie over. Did our coven get into any trouble for immolating a guy? Nope. No, they even joke about it in a very obnoxious meta way. What ended up happening to Jacob, Isaiah and Abe? No one cares. No one even raises the issue of them being orphans now. Screw that 12-year-old. No, Hollywood? No, not like that. I guess what I'm saying is, why would story beats have consequences, huh? There's only one thing left to get in here, and that is the sequel hook. Now, the reason that Lily was extra emotional at Timmy's wake was her finding out that she was adopted. How did she do that? Well, after seeing this gathering, she went snooping in Adam's office. It's a little opaque, it doesn't really make sense, but thankfully they ADR'd a line in to clear it up for you, dum-dum.
There's gotta be something here that proves it.
However, incomprehensibly, her essential papers are mixed in with Adam's patient files. This is contrived, but don't worry, it gets stupider. Having learned from the file that she's adopted, Lily angrily confronts her mother. She hears that Helen used to work here and adopted Lily from here, from this town. Now, all the way back at the start of the film, Lily and Helen did a big U-Haul renting trip to move in with Adam. We are not explicitly told that it was a long way, but the footage implies that pretty strongly. So Lily worked here, adopted Lily, moved away, and then moved back, and then mentioned nothing about moving back here, about it being a return. I mean, you have to wonder, why have her move at all? Why unnecessarily multiply contingencies? Is it not extremely contrived? I'll be honest with you, I think Zoe Lister-Jones just didn't pay attention to this because she is a terrible writer. Maybe this is a result of redrafting, just sort of not squaring ideas up from earlier drafts, who knows? You know, just like she didn't notice this wine glass teleporting around or the typos in this prop article here, like she didn't think why Helen would be getting the chicken to serve after everyone has eaten dinner already. Why not have Helen say she's putting plates away?
I'll get the chicken.
Here, let me help.
You can still have Timmy offer to help, which is the main point of the line. But I think she just originally wrote Helen getting the chicken, rewrote other bits, and then forgot to update the line. I am nitpicking here, but it is the myriad of sloppy details, inconsistencies, and nonsense that makes it easy to believe that, yeah, Zoe Lister-Jones just didn't think about the weirdness of them moving back to the same town that Helen adopted Lily from. She possibly had the way Lily was adopted written differently, then changed plans, and forgot to consider the impact on the overall story. Because Zoe Lister-Jones is a terrible writer and should never have been given this project. Adam teasing Lily with knowledge of her biological mother, that is a decent enough clue that it's going to be Nancy. And as Nancy was confined to an asylum at the end of the craft, how she had a kid, how she got pregnant, is a disturbing prospect. It's possible, but I don't want to think about it. But anyway, Zoe Lister-Jones isn't going to actually elaborate on it. Why would story beats have consequences after all? Both Scream 2022 and The Craft Legacy ended up using a surprise secret child to connect the Legacy sequel to the original. And to its mild credit, I do think The Craft Legacy is a little more believable in this respect. That's a side issue though.
I'm looking for it. And what is your relation?
Adam also implies, potentially, that he took Nancy's power, but absolutely nothing follows from this because Nancy is nothing more than sequel bait. And that's it. I mean, why would story beats have consequences? Fairuza Balk gets to return as Nancy and be on screen for just under 10 seconds and say one line, and then we're done. Like Jordan Peele's Candyman did with Tony Todd and Vanessa Williams, but far, far worse. Fairuza is here just as member berries, cynically used to bait the original fans, but not in long enough for any character development, or anyone who's new to the franchise to give a damn. No questions get answered here. Nancy is just there as a blank slate, a cipher that can be whatever they need if this awful content gets a sequel.
Oh.
And that is it. 84 minutes of horror content. Are you not entertained? This film is messier than the distinctive blend of 4 a.m. kebab and carling that clogs up the drains in university showers across the land. And the only way I can understand it is as a cynically produced piece of content made to fill a gap in Blumhouse's production and release schedule and make money off some cheaply acquired rights. I believe that to get this horror content made cheaply and also to fulfill the diversity quotas for film production that Blumhouse has promised it will keep to, they just hired a newbie who is completely unsuited to making a horror sequel to a cult hit, but who had the right diversity points and also the right agenda. Well done, Zoe. Consequently, this upjump mountebank made the activist adject prop that she was actually invested in, and then having got her bullet point list of political points that she wanted to raise and shove into a film, she then just sloppily fit a shoddy assortment of story beats from the original film and kind of hammered it into place and just sort of hoped it would vaguely cohere, without, I think, checking too deeply. The message very clearly came first. Now, I have no proof of this, I couldn't find any confirmation, it is just speculation, intuition, and a result of a close watching of The Craft Legacy. But I very firmly believe that Blumhouse saw Zoe Lister-Jones making an absolute mess of this story and then ordering very hasty rewrites to try and fix the ending and include at least a couple of scary scenes because gosh darn it, Zoe, it's a horror movie. Could you please try and make it scary at least a little bit? And then, having done all that, they cut a trailer, crammed in a few manipulative member berries that do not show up in the film to try and trick you into thinking you're going to see a well-made, competent horror sequel to a film that you actually like. This kind of bait and switching is just unforgivably cynical, and it is unforgivably manipulative. Who would even do something like that? Well, thanks for watching. I'm sorry the film sucked. By the way, what do you think about COVID-19?
Well, first off, the bloody thing should never have been released. It should have been kept in the vault for years and years and years and never see the light of day again. In fact, it should have been burned. That's how bad it was. But no, they had to let it out because they're incompetent, because they think, oh, this will make us loads of money down the line, potentially. Never see another job in their lifetimes because of how badly they messed this up. They've created untold misery on loads of people, and I can't believe that it didn't actually last that long. It felt like it was a lifetime.
Well, thanks, Harry. And, oh, by the way, on a completely different note, do you remember the Charlie Hebdo massacre?
Oh my god, total atrocity. I mean, I don't think those people deserved it personally. You know, it's a politically saturated piece of media. Obviously, it's going to offend someone. No need to do that though. Like, you know, they're just trying to entertain people, and these idiots go ahead and do that. I mean, it was just disgusting, despicable. I saw the aftermath. Horrible. Ugh.
Did you feel absolutely sick watching it?
I think I threw up like 3 times. Once an hour for 3 hours. My lungs hurt. I think my lungs were throwing up as well.
By the way, do you remember the General Studies A-level much?
Not... It was... it just felt like a complete waste of time. I wasn't really sure why I was there, to be honest. I would have liked to do pretty much anything else but sit through it, but I had to be there, so in the end I was sort of kind of counting down from 1,000 in my head to pass the time. I was just so annoyed, really. It was just a complete waste of my time, and I felt sort of irritated that someone would expect me to sit through it, frankly.
Well, lovely. Thank you very much. that will do absolutely grand. Thank you again, waifu.
You're very welcome.
Earlier I showed you the Rotten Tomatoes response, and here, looking at that audience score, Vox Populi, Vox Dei, baby. But I just wondered, who actually likes this? Who is defending the craft legacy? So I looked at some of those reviews, I tried to find positive ones, and I've noticed that anyone defending this content inevitably points to the politics, to the diversity, not understanding that even that is poorly integrated into this story, and it's completely contradicted by what happens in it. They'll defend it as a leap forward for representation, when it's more like Mao's great leap forward in terms of scripting. The craft legacy did not need to be bad. The diversity they were so keen on here, it doesn't make a film bad. I want to be very clear about this. I want you to hear me. The diversity does not make a film bad. It doesn't guarantee failure. The diversity even opened up story possibilities that could have been actually quite interesting, but it would require engaging with challenging ideas, with opposing viewpoints, understanding them, and being willing to see the people who disagree as humans and not pawns that you can manipulate and demonize as you need. And I just honestly believe Lee Janiak would have made a far superior film, probably with similar politics, but should have presented them competently, and most importantly, should have only focused on the politics once she had a good story in place. But sadly, we will never know. Instead, we just got this from Zoe Lister-Jones. A bloody and humiliating mess.
Can't relate.
Well, that was long, wasn't it? But I think you can see why there was so much wrong with that absolute atrocity of a script that I needed the time to take it. I can't cover everything wrong with this in just one of those 8-minute skims that you can see on many a horror channel. It's not the kind of thing that I can make. I like to do deeper analysis. I like to get a little esoteric, and I like to think that I have an angle that you are probably not going to see anywhere else. That's what I try to do anyway. And if you like what I do, well, we're on YouTube, so you know what I'm going to ask you. I'd really appreciate it if you like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And if you want to go one further, if you know someone who would appreciate this content, why not share them? Why not share them a video that you think they will like? Personally, I would love to see people either watch this one or my Invasion of the Body Snatchers video. I am very proud of that one. I want that to get all the views because I'm just so happy with that analysis. And if that weren't, I'm sounding so demanding, aren't I? If that weren't enough, you know, you've already done a lot for me there, but if you want to go that one step further, you can support me, you can help me make more ambitious things and make better cocktails to enjoy on stream, you know? What, some of this is frivolous, you know that. Anyway, if you want to chuck some money my way, I'd very much appreciate it, and you can do that either by super thanks on this video, or ideally, joining the channel as a member either here or on Subscribestar, and either way it will get you extra access, it will get you exclusive content, early content, and the thing that everyone seems to love, the Easter egg posts where I show you all the things that are hidden in the videos, allegedly. Alright, I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks y'all. Cheers.
Feminist women love Peterson. Chicks checking Jordan B. I'm sick of him. Look at him walking around grabbing his you know what, working for you know who. Yeah, but he's so cute though.